Welcome, everyone. This is the Holiday Readiness Tips webinar brought to you by Drive Commerce. Just a couple quick introductions to why we're here today. I'm Ryan Bell. I'm a partner with Drive Commerce since 2015, primarily work in the business development marketing areas, although I've been involved with the product development over the last 10 years as well. My e-commerce and digital marketing career is about 20 years long at this point in just about every vertical you could imagine. Most importantly, I'm the one who likes to talk and hear the sound of my own voice. So as our team picks up these little gold nuggets throughout the year, they send them my way, and then we get to put them into a presentation like this to hopefully help all of you out. Drive was founded in 2014 to address specific gaps that we saw in personalized user experiences using modularized e-commerce tools. Specifically, we've developed tools in the customization, personalization, and recommendation space, and I'll get into a little bit more about that. Why we're here today specifically is that, as usual, the e-commerce landscape is massively complicated like it was last year. Holiday prep is once again upon us, and it's difficult to know which way to go or which way is even up. And specifically, I think, one of the reasons that we wanted to put this webinar together now is that, at least for me in my career, this is one of the times that I've seen the most change with platforms that we all depend upon, like Google and Amazon and others that are out there, in the way that they're presenting our products and the way that they're presenting results to customers. And so these changes are occurring right up into holiday, and I think it's important to stay on top of this. So who is Drive Commerce? I mentioned before, we were formed in 2014. Primarily by e-commerce technologists who are looking for ways to extend platforms. As we saw how Shopify and Salesforce Commerce Cloud were starting to draw lines and say, this is where our platform will stop, we began to invent tools that could extend that, right? And allow our customers to really provide next level experiences for their customers. So our vision is to become that go-to solution. We want to show what's possible with primarily platform agnostic tools that can be used to empower brands to give their customers those really exceptional experiences that lead to personalization, customization, and ultimately a product that they're guaranteed to love. So we're one company. We have three complementary products. The first is Cartographer. This is the first product we developed. This is a quiz-based product recommendation engine. It has some really powerful tools that allow you to do great things with it in terms of marketing, obviously recommending products to customers. We see great ROI on that. This led to our next product, which is Customizer. We developed a tool that does product personalization, customization, and this can be at a simple level as monogramming and all the way up to complete product creation, end by end components and parts, allowing the customer to create something totally unique to them. Through our experiences in building both of those products, we found that clients often have data discrepancies or gaps in their catalog. And just to give you a quick anecdote about this, we were doing a running recommender on our Cartographer solution early on, and the client said, we would like to have a question that asks the customer if they prefer a lightweight running shoe or if that doesn't really matter. And we said, great, do you have a product attribute that indicates weight for the product? And they said, yeah, we absolutely have a weight attribute. As we pulled the data in, we realized that they absolutely do have a weight attribute. Sometimes it would say 8 ounces. Sometimes it would say half a pound. Sometimes it would say lightweight, right? And so what we found is that often many of our clients were frustrated in their attempts to build these next level experiences by the data that was in their catalog, or more correctly, the errors and gaps that were in the data in their catalog. And so we developed Pace Notes, which is a storefront management tool. Right now, it's specifically for Salesforce Commerce Cloud, but the idea is that it is auditing, reporting, and automation for your storefront based on rules that you can set up. I'm going to weave in a couple of callouts to Pace Notes as we go through here, because that's the most relevant product to this discussion today. But honestly, I'm not going to beat you guys over the head with it. If you would like to know more about Pace Notes after this, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to give you a demo and show you how it works. Okay, so with all that, we've worked with some really great clients. These are some of the logos that we're currently working with here. A lot of our experience is going to be based on working with these folks, right, and folks like them. And so what we're trying to do is bring to you the best practices, the tips that we've learned from working with these folks over the past 10 years, and specifically, obviously more recently this year, and give you some tips and ideas on things to look out for as we're coming into holiday here. So without any further ado on that, let's dive into some quick tips. At the top here, I'm just going to say the headlines that you'll see on these slides are maybe look a little bit remedial at first, and I'm hoping to unpack this a little bit. So when we see high quality images, hopefully everybody on this call already knows that we should have high quality images, but we'll unpack that a little bit and talk about why this is so important. And really, this is a big one for me in terms of this year. Google has started rolling out a new shopping interface. When you search for, in this case, I think this query is men's winter jacket for Seattle. they're going to give you a AI generated guided shopping experience, which tells you how you should choose a product in this vertical, and then give you a few select product recommendations from there, right? Now, I think that this is going to be a killer for product impressions for clients this year. Not least of which because obviously we're taking down the traditional Google, say 6 or 8 up products across the top down to just these 3 that are in this recommendation here. And this is going to be a really big shift, I think, in the way that we think about how we get traffic from engines like Google in going forward, right? And especially with impressions, this can be a really insidious one, because let's say that, you know, you don't have an image for this, you know, your blue Seattle rain jacket that someone should get, right? You're not even going to be in this result at all, right? And you're going to see this as declines in impressions, and this may be interpreted as like a market-wide thing, when there are actually things that we could do to improve the data in our systems and get ourselves placed here more prominently, right? So obviously Google has some, you know, basic specs, 250 pixels square, less than 5 megabytes, stuff like that. We are actually seeing retailers finding more success with larger images, up to even like a 2000 pixel square type of image. The sweet spot seems to be a little bit more in the 750 by 750 pixels range. And this is a good compromise generally between performance and detail. But there's, you know, obviously more conversations to be had around that depending on your product or vertical. I think not, so assuming that you kind of meet some of these basic requirements, right? Then we want to start to look at, okay, are we serving images for every product? Do we have maximum saturation of our capability here to present product to customers? And this is really where getting into your data is going to be really important, and knowing how to export it or look at it in bulk. Any kind of tools that you have on that, if you don't have one, you should probably find one, because a lot of this will depend upon being able to operate in bulk, or at least look at things all together, right? So let's talk a little bit about, you know, how we find missing images. I think it's important whenever you're talking about data to break it down into component pieces, right? So there's the first check of, does the data exist, right? And so most of the e-commerce platforms we talk about, Salesforce, Shopify, that sort of thing, you're specifying an image as a data attribute on that image. And typically it's by URL or file name, something like that, right? And you're saying this is where the file lives. Importantly, you know, you can do a check and just visually see that maybe data is populated, but I'll give you another quick anecdote here. We had a client who had a number of really creative on-brand names for their colors, right? So it'd be something like dragonfly wing and sea mist, which was green, like a really pretty iridescent green and blue, right? But green and blue nonetheless. And when they transferred those image names into their CDN, oftentimes what you find is that that ampersand would change to and amp, or spaces would get cut out or change to %20 or something like that. And there'd be a mismatch in the data that's calling that URL and the actual URL. So looking at the data, you would say, oh, there's no issue here. But looking further, or looking at the website itself, you would notice that there was a broken image. And I bring this up because this is something we've learned over our experience, is that these really should be 2 separate checks, right? And so there's mentioned now that there's a couple call outs through here throughout the presentation here for Paste Notes. And this is one of the things that Paste Notes does really well. We can automatically check to see, is this an image angle that should have something populated to it, a URL or a file name? And then take the second step and say, okay, if it does have that populated, let's go check that URL or file name and make sure that it actually exists and would load on the site. And so Paste Notes does that automatically. You can do this yourself using a couple of other tools as well. But I think this is going to be one of the major gaps that retailers are going to find this year in terms of missing product impressions and not understanding where that volume went. Another call out that I wanted to make here is looking for your less obvious images, right? So obviously, I think everybody looks at their hero product every day coming into holiday, and you would know if there was an image missing, right? You know, we discussed some of those trickier things where like there's something populated, but the image isn't there. Another thing you should pay attention to is those less obvious ones, like color swatches, right? Color swatches are often served from the same CDN or the same kind of file repository. You want to make sure that people can find those and be able to click on them. It can be really difficult to comb through your site and look for missing images that way. And so again, having a way to kind of bulk export that and look at, here are all the file names, is really important. The other one that I like to bring up at this time in terms of less obvious images is to think about your accessories, right? If you have you know, your sort of core audience of customers who already own your core product, they are often going to be receiving gifts at this time of year from someone who's buying them accessories or enhancements or something else for their core product, right? And oftentimes, I call this the sock problem, right? If we're a $1 billion running company, we have a flagship PDP for our running shoe that looks beautiful and it has reviews and videos and all this. I always go and look at the sock page, right? Because nobody ever pays attention to the sock page, and that's really the bare bones data that you're going to get for every product, right? 2 images, short description, whatever. Think about your socks this time of year, right? Make sure that you have you're giving those products the attention they deserve, because not only are you going to have people buying supplementary product for your core users as gifts, but those people are not as familiar with your product line, and they may not understand exactly how everything works together. And so it's really, really important that you don't lose those folks, because they have less attachment to shopping on your site than someone else does, and they're very much more likely to go elsewhere, Amazon, a competitor, to get something similar. So I would say, the second thing to check for is your less obvious images. Look for those color, look at color swatches. Look at your less trafficked product generally. This would also apply if you have kind of holiday specific product that comes out this time of year. Make sure that those are all tightened up and ready to go. Okay. Having talked a bit about images, I want to move on to pricing, because when we talk about some of the changes that are coming into these marketplaces like Google, one is obviously the product images. That's the first thing everybody sees. The second thing that people are typically looking for is their price shopping, right? These engines, these new experiences on Google and elsewhere are making it really, really easy to compare pricing across the board. It's easier than ever. And you know what? Pricing errors are just embarrassing. And they can also be really hard to detect, right? So the first tip that I have for you here, and this is kind of an old school retail trick, probably some of you are doing this already, is to set your prices using a pricing strategy that's easy to visualize, right? So I'll just give you an example of one of our clients. They use 0.99 cents for MSRP regular price product and 0.95 for marked down product, right? And so what they can see at a glance is if a product should be on full, regular sale or end of life. And anything that isn't 99 or 95 is wrong, right? So they can see it at an instant. If a price has been set, sometimes people will change a price book and say, okay, knock everything down by 10% and then put it back up. Someone who adheres to a strict 99, 95 pricing strategy would be able to look at that and say, okay, this is wrong. We need to mark it up one way or the other, right? This is also really useful from a data mining perspective, because then it makes it really easy to spot aberrations for machines as well. So if you don't have like a pretty strict pricing strategy, I'd encourage you to think about how you might be able to implement something like that, because it can really save you a lot of time, especially in larger catalogs. Moving beyond that, other ways to run analyses on these. I think the most obvious one is a high-low analysis. And again, this comes back to really having the capability to export products. I'll throw out that Paste Notes allows you to kind of slice and dice your catalog down to say, hey, this is our gifting category. Let's just check all the prices for these products specifically, right? So you don't have to do everything at once. But a high-low analysis would allow you to export your product catalog, and then you want to look at the top 10% and the bottom 10%. And ideally, you do this on kind of a regular basis, like ongoing, so that you can see products that are coming in or going out of those two categories. And that way, when you see a product come in with a really high price, you'll know, oh, okay, this shouldn't be here, right? This isn't one of our top products. I'll give you a quick example on why this is important. We had a client who was doing a promotion in Europe one year for holiday, and they were giving away a set of headphones as a gift with purchase. Nothing great, probably about a $75 set of headphones or something like that, right? But they didn't want people to buy that product independently. And so what they did was they set the product up, because it had to be a product to be a gift with purchase, but they set the price to something crazy, like 9,999 euro, right? Just in case anybody found the page and wanted, thought they might want to buy it, they set the price to something ridiculous. Well, when the promo started, they found that they had moved something like, $200,000 worth of merchandise or something like that, or even more, because the gift with purchase was treated as a discount from 10,000 euro down to zero, right? And so every, one of those 200 pairs that they sold or something like that are included was counted as that much. Now, of course, their platform, they eventually worked it out with the platform, and they didn't get charged or anything like that, but it's a headache, and it's something that somebody has to deal with at some point. And so what we want to do is just make sure we're aware when a product gets a $10,000 price tag, we want to make sure that it should have a $10,000 price tag, right? And kind of catch some of those errors before they become real problems for us. So I mentioned pricing strategy before. Looking for deviations in your pricing strategy is a really, really nice way to be able to check pricing just across the board. You can also do this by product category. So if you have, strategies where, hey, our main product is always this, look for, deviations within that. I think having a really solid pricing strategy sets you up to be able to do really great things with your data. The other consideration I would give to you here is when you're talking about MAP or other attributes, I'm sure everybody knows this, just a level set. MAP would be minimum advertised pricing. So it's the price that we're going to say nobody should be talking about the product costing any less than this unless they're VIP or logged in or something like that, right? And so this is the price that we're going to show to everybody. No one should have a lower price than that, right? Oftentimes we'll find that retailers can get in hot water by doing a blanket discount which goes below MAP or something like that. And so this is a good time to check if you have a MAP attribute in your catalog, or you can otherwise get those MAP attributes for your products. Maybe just go ahead and do a double check and make sure that you're not advertising a price that's lower than that MAP that would get you into some trouble there. Another idea there is cost or margin data. If you have that kind of cost or margin data built into your catalog, it's an easy comparison to say, okay, this is the price we're setting it to. This is the margin we want to maintain. Are we within that range? And if not, we may need to go adjust some pricing. So comparing to other attributes or having the ability to load those attributes in for comparison is really, really key. I already shouted out Pace Notes a little bit on this one, but I'll second it again by saying that Pace Notes does both reporting and alerts. So one thing we could do is I mentioned the high-low analysis of the top 10%, bottom 10%. We could run that analysis weekly through Pace Notes, and that could be delivered to your inbox, right? Secondarily, then we could have alerts. So when something goes above, say something is priced over $1,000 or something like that, we can have an alert go straight to everybody's inbox that says, hey, we found a product that seems like it's priced way wrong. Let's go check on it. If it's normal, you can ignore it and you won't get it again. If it's not, we can fix it. Okay. Again, category assignment, right? Kind of 101 stuff, I think. But maybe there's a couple of different ways to think about this holiday. So I think to just set the tone here, we have to remember that holiday traffic is your VIPs who are making their lists, and then gift givers who are shopping for the VIPs primarily, right? Obviously, you'll always have some core shoppers in there too. A lot of people create gift guides for this to kind of help bring those people in and educate them on the product and guide them to the purchase that's going to be the most beneficial for them. However, not everybody hits your gift guides. I'm sure everybody's frustrated by the percentage that you see of people who actually go through your gift guide every year. More likely, folks are going to navigate, and oftentimes where they're going to go is some of your categories you don't even expect, like new. One trend that we saw last year that came up quite a bit was sustainability. And McKinsey called this out in one of their recent studies that 2/3 of consumers consider the use of sustainable materials to be an important purchasing factor. And this seems to have ramped up quite a bit. So we had a client who included a sustainable group on their normal gift giving guide last year. And it got more click through than some of their other traditional groups, like gifts under 50 and stuff like that. So I think this is an important consideration. Sustainability may not apply specifically to your vertical, and so you may want to look around for some other trends that are happening in your vertical that you could take advantage of. But specifically at holiday, this is a really good time to try out some of these new categories, because you're going to have new people on the site who haven't really had a conversation with you before, right? And so it's important to kind of talk to them about some of your ideals. So I would say, remember to add the easy gift finding filters, right? For him, for her, under 50. You should also consider things like bestsellers, limited editions, or exclusives. Those are going to be things that people who are shopping for someone else are going to have their eye out for, right? They want the newest thing, they want the best thing. On the subject of a new category, at holiday time, I think it's worth considering expanding your definition of what new means, right? When we think about it, typically we're thinking of our core client who's on the site every week and they know what's new, right? But again, at holiday time, we have people who are unfamiliar with the brand, potentially outside of just some association with it. And so what we want to do is make sure that we have products in there that may be new to the people who are gifting at holiday, but wouldn't necessarily be new to your core audience, right? So it's okay to expand some of those definitions, put some of those top sellers from the new category previously in the year back in there. So just really consider, some of those eye-catching categories like bestsellers, new, exclusives, that sort of thing. Take a look at those categories and see how they would be merchandised to the eye of someone who's giving a gift versus your core customer. I would recommend having a sustainable category too. If you have products that fit into that kind of categorization, it's all relative, right? So, it could be that this product for your industry uses more sustainable materials than others, even though it's not, necessarily sustainable in the grand scheme of things or something like that, right? Just make sure you're considering some of these trends within your own industries as well. I mentioned before that accessories often become a pretty big deal during gift giving times. And so ensuring that they are not only priced right, have images like we've talked about before, but also that they're entering into the categories where they're most beneficial. And so I think, generally speaking, you want to place these close to the product where they're going to be most useful. So whatever core product the accessories kind of go with the most, make sure that you're merchandising them to the same categories, merchandising around, maybe play around with your sorting rules to get them a little bit more exposure. Because again, you're going to be talking to people who are not always necessarily shopping for core product. They may be shopping for accessories as well, especially if you're on kind of the higher end of the average order value scale. And I talked about gift guides a little bit before. We think they're great. Our cartographer product is really great at building gift guide and gift recommendation quizzes. So if that's something you're thinking about, definitely check it out. I think gift guides in general, people are looking for typically your brand plus gifts, right? And if you get someone to go through a gift guide, I think that's generally awesome. You'll give them a really good recommendation. And I think most clients, at least most of our clients, see really good ROI on those gift finders. But again, you can't get everybody to go through that experience, right? And so I think it's, again, important, I'm going to harp on it again, that your new categories, these other bestsellers and limited editions, make sure that you are merchandising your accessories or like lower value items in there. Those supplementary items are going to be what people are shopping for. And especially with accessories, they tend to be sort of that add-on kind of stocking stuffer, if you will. And those can be really important in increasing AOVs at holiday time. And I'll throw out one more shout out for Pace Notes on this one. So the sustainability piece actually comes from a client that we worked with, who they say in all their product descriptions, this is sustainable. This is, made with sustainable materials or something like that. And so one thing that Pace Notes can do is actually search through any product attribute, including the description, and find keywords and put those into place. So one thing we could do is say, find all the sustainable products that say sustainable in their description and assign them to this sustainable product category so that we don't have to have someone manually doing that all the time. We can also do that with things like how recently was the product placed into the catalog. If it's within 30 days, it goes in our new section. Does it have a sale price assigned to it? We can assign it to the sale section of the site automatically as well. So quick shout out there. This makes a lot of this easier to do on the platform, even if you can't sort of do the exports out of the box right now. I also just wanted to throw in a quick word about Beyond Holiday. So everything we've talked about today is going to continue. Google has announced they're obviously rolling out their AI guided shopping experiences at this point. They've also announced what they're calling the feedless future. And what this means is that your Merchant Center feeds are eventually going to be not used anymore by Google. We won't have to submit them. They are going to depend 100% on crawling for populating their merchant data. And so this means that the industry is really moving toward a product detail page that is a hybrid of all of the specific detailed information that we used to submit in product merchant feeds, in addition to the user experience that blends all that up into something personal for me that tells me why this product is right. So now the presentation and the data accuracy are actually going to be really tied very closely together. And the kind of work that we're doing for holiday prep right now is going to be the kind of work that we're doing all year round going forward. So, as we talk about things like being able to bulk export, having a solution that will look at your images for you and make sure that they're all correct, looking at pricing and everything like that, this is just going to become a daily activity. And so I really encourage you to start to look for tools and platforms that will help aid you in this kind of going forward reality that we have in front of us. Okay, with that, I think I'd love to dive in some questions if we have any. And I think, I don't know, Tina, if there's a way, I can't show it on my screen right now, but in your lower right, there should be some shapes like a triangle, square, and a circle. If you click on that, you should see a QA box in there and be able to drop questions in that way. And I'll just give a couple minutes in case anybody wants to type any in that they thought of while we were going here. See if I can switch over. See. Oops. Let me pop this one out. Out of my screen here. Here we go. Okay, let me move this over so I can see. Okay. Let me just pull up. Okay. I don't know if I can. Here we go. Questions. All right, here we go. Okay, so first question we have here is, we have a large catalog. How do you recommend balancing image resolution and load speed? Any specific tools you suggest for optimizing images at scale? That's a great question. So the way I think about image optimization and balancing those two things in terms of performance and detail is really consider your product and your audience, right? If you are selling sports cars or high-end golf clubs or something like that, you're probably selling to someone like me who has two 30-inch monitors in front of him at all times. And I probably want to see all the details on those products, right? Because it's going to be a bigger purchase, longer decision-making time. I'm really going to want some big detailed imagery on that. And honestly, a lot of that sort of creates in the mind of the consumer a level of technical competence, right? In terms of, hey, you know, these guys have really detailed imagery. I trust that they know their product really well. If you're more on the spectrum of something like fast fashion or cosmetics, something along those lines, I think you're probably safer to use a smaller image resolution and prioritize speed at that point, especially if you have more mobile shoppers, because they're not going to benefit from having large images as much, and you'll be able to deliver those images much more quickly if you stick to kind of the lower end of the spectrum there. So I would say, you know, it depends a little bit on your audience and your product, but the more detailed, the longer the purchase decision cycle, the safer you are to use larger images. The lower, you know, the lower the cost and the lower the price point of the product and the lower the time to purchase to make that decision. I think that is a case where you'd probably want to optimize more for speed and performance. In terms of optimizing images at scale, there are tools out there that can help you do this. In general, I think, you know, your most image production houses should be able to kind of help out with something like this in terms of setting those parameters. But if you need some specific recommendations or something, maybe we can talk after and get some ideas there. Another one, awesome. Okay, so with Google moving away from merchant feeds, what best practices do you suggest to ensure our product data remains SEO friendly and aligned with Google's new standards? Yeah, this is a great call out, a great question. The short answer is that this is very new still, right? And so I guess the answer that I would give you is that traditionally we would save weight on the PDP by submitting a lot of information in merchant feeds, and more of that information needs to be on the page now. So I think there's an exercise in making sure your PDPs load really fast anyway, and then going through and doing the structured data exercise of implementing these additional merchant feed fields. Then you need to think about the fact that this is all in service of these sort of AI guided shopping experiences that are out there, right? So when I, on this slide back here, this men's winter jacket for Seattle, the descriptive text up here goes into, you know, Seattle's a wetter climate, so you're going to prioritize waterproofing over, you know, straight warmth because it doesn't really get below zero. There's a lot of stuff that goes into those kinds of the large language model that's really producing this guided shopping experience. And so from a presentation standpoint, then not only now do we have to submit all of the data in the kind of background of the PDP, but we also need to start to speak to the use cases for these folks, right? So is this jacket better for wet climates versus dry climates, right? You need to start to build in some of that. And that can be through either merchant provided detail, like, you know, you're kind of going in there and saying, this is the use case that our customers typically have, which by the way is gold for kind of the AI gold rush that's going on right now. Like they are looking for those kinds of, you know, the crawlers for AI are really looking for these kinds of experiential or qualitative analyses of the products, because yeah, they can look at an ounces amount and say if this is lightweight compared to other shoes. But if you as the merchant or someone as a reviewer of the product is saying these things, that this is a great jacket for Seattle, that's going to promote your product above the other one. So I think that there's just sort of an expansion of talking about your products and really finding more and more ways to put more and more of that content on to the PDP so that it's available to those search engines, and then really working to optimize from there. Let's see, another question. How should we prepare our product data to ensure it is AI friendly? That's a great question. I think there's a couple different approaches here. One, and I'm sorry, this is a little bit repetitive of what I was just talking about, but I think there's two aspects to this, right? There's this sort of data gathering, and then there's this sort of qualitative matching. And so the data gathering piece really comes down to, how do we put more structured data, more data that's readable to search engines and crawlers into the page? Because that's going to be very valuable for these kinds of shopping experiences we're talking about on Google, where it's up to the minute, is this product in stock? The flip side of that then is talking about your product in a way that will connect with the kind of AI queries, right? What AI is doing to the search market right now is it is causing people's queries to become longer, more personalized, and more specific. And so, whereas we might have seen someone just search for men's winter jacket in the past and then scroll and scroll and scroll, people are getting more comfortable with asking questions to Google and other AI bots, right? And say, what is a good jacket for Seattle, right? What's a good winter jacket for Seattle, right? And so as those things get more conversational, we move away from the kind of traditional SEO of like, hey, we're going after this specific keyword because that's what everybody searches, and more almost trying to attack that long tail on the product detail page itself and say, what are all the possible uses for this product? What do people get the most value out of this for? And then how do we connect that to the places where our customers are, not only geographically, but like what they do, or, what phase of life they're in, that kind of thing. Because all that will feed into how they use search terms and how they interact with AI chatbots to get the results that hopefully ultimately lead to your site. So I would say, in my head, break it down to, we need to get as much structured data in as we can, basically replicate that merchant feed into the PDP. Simultaneously, we need to start talking about all those attributes, like what does it mean for a shoe to be lightweight? How is that benefiting me as the consumer or as the runner? And then ruthless optimization of performance based on those two things. Because we're adding more weight to that page, we need to make sure that every single piece is loading as quickly as it possibly can in the right order. Let's see, we mentioned discrepancies in product attributes such as weight measurements. What are some key attributes we should prioritize for validation to avoid issues during the holiday season? Oh, this is such a good question. I love questions about prioritization. So I think you want to look at, specifically, there's two ways to look at this: holistically and then specifically at holiday time. If you have data from last holiday season that you are confident in and can go back and look at, I think that is a great source to look at what were popular filters or refinements. How do people use the site, right? So often your product attributes will get rolled up into, kind of a search refinement, that usually left column that says like filter by color or size or whatever. Those attributes, whatever people use the most, that's going to be your first step to looking at, okay, make sure that we have all of our products included in these filters when someone comes through and does this, takes this action, right? So I think that's really important. Look at your filters and refinements by the amount of traffic or interaction they get and start there. The next one that I would look at is anything that is presented to the customer in the interface, right? So if, let's say on my site, I have, a call out for lightweight or something like that, or on sale, any of those things that are customer facing and might be important to the customer, that's the next target that I would look at as an attribute to make sure that you have all your product represented there accurately. The third area that I would look into then is in terms of product attributes, I kind of, I'll say that like in my last answer, the last example I gave, it's kind of cheating to say, obviously price and image and product name are the biggest things on the page. So those are going to be very important. Obviously the things that people use are going to be very important. From there, then it's sort of like any attribute that I would use that factors into that decision-making process, right? So let's, if we're showing that a shoe is lightweight, let's make sure that it's lightweight. If we're showing that something else is on sale, let's make sure it's on sale. Any of those little kind of nudges that would push somebody to put something in their cart and check out with it, I think that's going to be your key. Beyond that, when I'm talking about the kind of like lightweight and things like that, If you have gift recommenders or other product recommenders on your site that rely on some of that data to produce recommendations, that's another high priority target, right? So if you classify products by like gift types or who they're for or price or something like that, those are all attributes to look at to make sure that you have really tight merchandising and assortments within those filters. Right. Okay. Well, I think we're pretty close to time. I can give you everybody a few minutes back. I will just say again, thank you so much for attending our webinar. If you're looking for more information on our products, drivecommerce.com, or feel free to reach out to sales@drivecommerce.com. Hopefully you probably have signed up through a link or something like that, so you'll be able to find us again. But we're happy to answer any questions you come up with after the webinar. If you have specific things you want to talk about, just kind of more one-on-one, please let us know. Feel free to reach out. Cool. With that, I'll say thank you, and we'll hopefully see you soon. Thank you, everybody.